On a map, the shape of this land is deceptively simple, a long, slender spine attached to the top of a continent. But a map is a lie of simplification. To have traveled its coast is to understand that there is no single line, only an infinitely complex, fractal edge where land and sea bleed into one another through 100,000 islands. The map shows vast, empty spaces in its interior, colored white or green, and given a single name. But to enter those spaces is to discover they are not empty at all. They are worlds unto themselves, governed by their own subtle logic, their own ancient rhythms. The map shows a single nation, but the reality we have witnessed is a collection of vastly different worlds, stacked one on top of the other. The world of the fisherman, tied to the sea. The world of the herder, tied to the high plateau. The world of the farmer, clinging to a vertical cliff face. What this journey has revealed is that complexity. It was an attempt to travel beyond the simple lines of the map and into the true texture of the place, to find the life that persists in the spaces the mapmakers colored as empty. This is Norway. Along the Norwegian Sea, the land offers only a thin, precarious margin between the absolute verticality of the mountain and the perpetual volatility of the ocean. Here, in the Lofoten archipelago, the entire logic of existence is written in the relationship between these two elemental forces. The mountains, ancient granite thrust upward from the seabed, are too steep to farm, their peaks too exposed to inhabit. They are not a resource, they are a wall, a colossal barrier that dictates the shape of the wind and the direction of the shadow, forcing all life down to the water's edge. The sea, however, is the opposite. It is a liquid prairie, a vast, cold, and dangerously fertile wilderness. For more than 1,000 years, life here has been organized around a single, miraculous event. The annual return of the northeast Arctic cod, the scry, which journeys south from the Barents Sea to spawn in these specific, sheltered waters. This is not a migration, it is a pilgrimage, and for centuries it was the economic engine of an entire nation. This is not a life of agriculture, tied to the slow, predictable cycle of the soil. It is a life of the hunt, governed by the mysterious, invisible currents of the ocean and the migratory impulse of a single species of fish. The entire culture is an architecture of waiting, and then of intense, concentrated work. The Rorbua, the iconic red cabins, were not originally built as picturesque homes, but as temporary functional barracks for a seasonal army of fishermen who descended on these islands for the winter cod season. They are built on stilts not for the view, but for direct access to the boats, their foundations rooted in the cold, tidal water itself. To live here is to understand that wealth does not come from the land you stand on, but from the dark, moving water that surrounds it. It is to understand a form of sustenance that is always in motion, a resource that must be met on its own terms, in its own element, often in the teeth of a winter storm. The dried cod, the turfisk, hung on the yell and cured by the cold, dry winter air, became a form of currency that connected this remote archipelago to the markets of medieval Europe. Further north, the negotiation becomes harder. On the island of Senja, the mountains are more brutal, the coastline more exposed, the brief Arctic summer yielding more quickly to the long, storm-battered winter. Here, the fishing villages are smaller, clinging to the few sheltered inlets the geology provides. The connection to the outside world is not a given. It is a condition, maintained by ferry schedules that are themselves subject to the temperament of the sea. To build a life here is to make a conscious choice for isolation, to accept a profound silence as the baseline of existence. It is to live in a state of constant awareness of the weather, to read the sky, to feel the shift in the wind, to know when the sea is offering a passage and when it is demanding you stay put. The permanence of the mountains stands in stark contrast to the fleeting, fragile nature of the human settlement at their base. But the coastal negotiation takes other forms. South, on the Helgoland coast, the landscape flattens into a maze of islands. Here, in the Vega Archipelago, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, survival was based on a unique and delicate partnership. For over 1,000 years, the islanders have built small shelters for the wild eider ducks that migrate here to nest. They protect the ducks from predators, and in return, after the ducklings have left the nest, they harvest the incredibly insulating down that the mother duck uses to line it. This is not farming. It is a form of symbiotic guardianship, a relationship of mutual trust between human and animal, built on generations of quiet observation. It is a testament to a different kind of coastal intelligence, one based not on the aggressive hunt, but on the patient, gentle art of providing sanctuary. To leave the coast, to climb above the tree line, is to enter another state of being. Here, on the Hardangervidda, Europe's largest mountain plateau, the logic of the vertical world is replaced by the logic of the horizontal. This is a landscape defined not by features, but by the apparent absence of them. It is a great, elevated emptiness, the true roof of the country, a piece of the Arctic tundra left behind in the heart of southern Norway. The pressure here is not the crashing wave or the steep cliff, but the wind, an invisible, sculpting force, a constant presence that has stripped the land of all but the most resilient, low-lying forms of life. There are no trees to break its passage, no deep valleys to shelter in. To be here is to be exposed, to feel the sheer scale of the sky and the curvature of the earth in a way that is impossible on the coast. This is a landscape that teaches a different kind of humility, one born not of sudden danger, but of slow, grinding attrition. Further east, the mountains of Rondaine, the country's first national park, offer a variation on this theme. They are older, more eroded than the jagged peaks of the west, their forms softened by eons of ice and wind. This is a landscape that speaks of deep geological time, of a stability that makes human history seem like a fleeting moment. It was the stark, minimalist beauty of these mountains that inspired the conservation movement in Norway, a recognition that some places hold a value that cannot be measured in economic terms, but for what they are in themselves, a space for silence, for solitude, and for connection to a world that operates on a timescale far greater than our own. This is not an empty land. It is the last great wilderness for the wild reindeer of Europe, a kingdom of migration governed by the availability of lichen, their only winter food. For millennia, human life here was not settled, but nomadic, following the herds. The paths that cross this plateau are not roads, they are ancient corridors of survival, marked by cairns, small piles of stone that are the only form of architecture this landscape will permit. Each stone is a message sent across time, a reassurance from a previous traveler that this is the way, that you are not the first to feel lost in this immensity. To travel here is to enter a different relationship with distance and time. The horizon does not get closer, it recedes. The journey is measured not in miles, but in the slow, rhythmic process of walking, a moving meditation in a world of stone and wind. This plateau is also the source of much of the nation's power, its immense watershed, harnessed by a network of dams and tunnels hidden within the mountains, generating the hydroelectricity that powers the cities below. In the far north, on the Finnmarksvidda, this logic of movement and exposure reaches its ultimate expression. This is the traditional heartland of the Sami, the indigenous people of the north, a culture whose entire existence and worldview were built around the reindeer. Here, the winter darkness is not a brief interruption. It is a season in itself, a long blue twilight that lasts for months. The sun does not rise, it only grazes the southern horizon, casting a weak horizontal light across a world of snow. The Sami calendar does not have 4 seasons, but 8. each one defined by the condition of the snow, the availability of pasture, and the specific needs of the reindeer herd, a linguistic and cultural map of a year, lived in intimate partnership with the environment. Survival here is contingent on a form of knowledge that is not written, but embodied. It is the ability to navigate by the texture of the snow, to read the wind for signs of a coming storm, to understand the subtle language of the herd. The snowmobile has replaced the sled, and GPS has augmented the stars, but the fundamental relationship remains. It is a life lived in motion, a life that does not own the land in the Western sense, but passes through it, utilizing ancient migratory routes. This way of life has faced immense pressure from modern development and national borders that cut across traditional grazing lands. Yet it persists, a testament to the human ability to find a home, not in a fixed place, but on a path, a sacred geography of movement etched into the Arctic landscape. Every landscape in Norway is a story about water. Its journey begins here, in the Jotunheimen Range, the highest mountains in northern Europe. This is a world of stone and ice, the domain of the glaciers, the slow, grinding rivers of ice that are the last remnants of the great ice sheet that shaped this country. A glacier is not a static feature, it is a living thing, breathing with the seasons, advancing and retreating, its blue ice groaning under its own immense weight. It is a barometer of the planet's health, and its current rapid retreat is a silent, ominous signal. From this ancient ice, the water begins its long descent, obeying the fundamental law of gravity. It carves its way through the high country, gathering force, becoming a river, carrying with it the ground-down rock of the mountains. It flows through valleys that it helped to shape, past forests and fields, its energy a constant, creative force. And then it reaches its destination. It flows into the fjord, and its identity changes. The fresh water, lighter, flows out over the deep, cold, saline water that has filled this ancient, ice-carved valley. The river ends, but the water continues its journey, becoming part of the vast, interconnected system of the ocean. The Ålandsfjord, a narrow branch of the great Sognefjord, is the end of this river's journey, a place where the logic of the mountains and the logic of the sea meet and merge in a deep, silent, and breathtakingly beautiful synthesis. The fjord is not a river. It is an arm of the sea, a deep, saline wound in the land. To be inside it is to be at the bottom of a canyon, the sky reduced to a narrow strip between colossal walls of granite. This is a world of absolute verticality. In places like the Geirangafjord, The human response to this geological challenge was not to retreat, but to ascend. The abandoned farms that cling to these cliffs are not follies. They are monuments to a form of human tenacity that borders on the unbelievable. Here, on ledges barely wide enough to support a house, families lived for centuries, cultivating soil they had carried up from the fjord shore in baskets, their children tethered by ropes to prevent them from falling into the abyss. Their only connection to the outside world was a rope ladder. This vertical world forces a confrontation with the human scale. On the edge of Prekestolen, the individual is reduced to a temporary observer, a fleeting presence before a geological fact that was here long before us and will remain long after. The awe it inspires is inseparable from a primal fear. This is not a landscape that offers comfort, it offers perspective. It reminds us of our own fragility, our own smallness in the face of deep time and geological force. It is a place that commands silence, not through peace, but through sheer, overwhelming scale. And then, the other extreme. After the long darkness of the polar night, the light returns with an intensity that redefines the very concept of a day. At the North Cape, the northernmost point of the European continent, the sun does not set for over 2 months. The rhythm of life, the fundamental cycle of light and dark that governs existence everywhere else, is suspended. Time loses its familiar anchors. There is only a continuous, unending day, a state of perpetual illumination that is both beautiful and deeply disorienting. Plants grow at an accelerated rate, birds sing throughout the night, and the human body struggles to find its rhythm for sleep. To stand here at midnight, in the full light of the sun, looking out over the Barents Sea towards the unseen pole, is to feel the mechanics of the solar system. It is to be viscerally aware of the tilt of the Earth on its axis, the simple astronomical fact that creates this extraordinary phenomenon. It is the opposite pressure to the polar night, a force of relentless light that, like the darkness, demands a profound adaptation from every living thing that chooses to endure it. There is a point where the negotiation with nature ends and survival becomes a matter of pure logistics. Midway between mainland Norway and the North Pole lies Svalbard, an archipelago that exists in a permanent state of exception. This is not the subarctic, this is the high Arctic, a place where the ground is permanently frozen, where the sun disappears for 4 months, and where there are more polar bears than people. Life here is not an organic outgrowth of the landscape. It is a deliberate and fragile human outpost, an act of defiance against a set of conditions that are fundamentally hostile to human biology. The houses of Longyearbyen are built on stilts, not for the water, but to keep their warmth from melting the permafrost on which they stand. A constant admission that the very ground beneath them is unstable. Here, the relationship with the wild is not romantic. It is pragmatic and dangerous. The polar bear is not a symbol. It is the apex predator, a constant reminder that in this environment, humans are not at the top of the food chain. The rifle is not a choice. It is a necessity, a tool for coexistence where the boundaries are absolute. And it is here, in this most fragile of human settlements, that humanity has chosen to place its ultimate insurance policy. The global seed vault, a modern ark buried deep within the permafrost, is a testament to both our ingenuity and our anxiety. It is a recognition that the agricultural stability we take for granted elsewhere is not guaranteed. In the coldest, most remote town on Earth, we have stored the genetic memory of our civilization's food supply, a quiet admission that the greatest threat to our survival may not be the ice, but ourselves. From the fractured coast to the empty plateaus, from the vertical canyons to the frozen deserts of the high north, a single, unifying logic reveals itself. In none of these places did human life attempt to conquer the landscape. No mountains were leveled, no fjords were filled, no rigid geometric grid was imposed upon a land that refused to be tamed. The settlement did not shape the land shaped the settlement. The house, the boat, the path, the very rhythm of the year, all were responses to the questions the environment kept asking. And the people, through a wisdom accumulated over 100 generations, accepted those terms. This is not a story of human dominance over nature. It is a story of human accommodation with it, a long and quiet epic of resilience, ingenuity, and a profound respect born of necessity. What has persisted here is not the result of favorable circumstance, but of a long inherited familiarity with pressure and impermanence. It is the accumulated understanding that the most appropriate response to a powerful and unforgiving world is not to fight against its fundamental nature, but to learn, with patience and humility, the precise and subtle art of living well within it. As the modern world confronts a future where the stability of our climate is no longer certain, these remote northern communities no longer look like relics of a distant past. They begin to feel like early chapters of a story. The rest of the world is only now, with great difficulty, beginning to learn. They are a testament that the most enduring civilizations are not always the ones that build the highest walls or the most powerful engines. They are the ones that learn to listen most closely to the earth, to understand its materials, to respect its forces, and to build their lives in harmony with its oldest, most powerful, and most enduring rhythms. They are a form of wisdom the world has largely forgotten, a wisdom it may desperately need to remember.